Welcome to the Marketing Millennials, the no BS marketing podcast. I'm Daniel Murray, and join me for unfiltered conversations with the brains behind marketing's coolest companies. The one request I tell our guests, stories or it didn't happen. Get ready to turn the up. The best marketers are thinking about contrarian ways to reach their audience. Today, I sat down with Jeromy Sonne, the CEO of Decibel Ads, a programmatic audio ad buying platform. We chatted about the importance of non-click channels, how to test new channels, and why to create a data moat. Now, on to the episode. I'm a big fan of what the Decibel team is doing with audio advertising. They make it easy to get in the ears of your customers with advanced targeting, a powerful conversion pixel, and a choice between human and AI voices. Their powerful platform integrates across almost all streaming and podcast platforms. Sign up now at decibelads.com using code millennials for $100 in credits. Start your campaign in as little as 5 minutes at decibelads.com. What's up, Jeromy? Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, appreciate you having me.
I want to start off and just ask for everybody who doesn't know, how did you get into the marketing space?
I don't know if I would really say I'm a veteran of the marketing space or whatever. I've been doing it for a while, a little over a decade at this point, but yeah, so this is actually genuinely true story. And don't laugh, try not to laugh too hard. But when I was in college, that movie, The Social Network came out, and I was like, oh, wow, be a billionaire with a tech startup. I think that sounds pretty fun. So I'll do that now. And so me and a couple of my buddies that were comp sci majors did a startup, and I was like, I got to figure out how to get users for this thing. And so in 2011, I ran my first Facebook ad, and the startup was a horrific failure, but the Facebook ads I ended up doing for basically the next 10 years. And so that's kind of how I got into marketing, was just totally by accident. From there, I did a lot of freelance stuff. I worked in-house for an Icelandic fintech company. I've worked for startups, for agencies, kind of all over the place. So I'm a little bit of a Swiss Army knife, I guess you could say, when it comes to that sort of thing, but always kind of in that performance growth marketing role for sure.
That's awesome. And I know, obviously, you didn't say one of the biggest parts, but you founded a company off of your experience in growth marketing. We could talk about that later, but I think it's a cool product as well.
Yeah. I thought I'd take another crack at be a billionaire tech startup guy again. So, we'll see. Not there yet, but we're still working on it.
So you've done this growth marketing, paid advertising for a while, and you've really been passionate about non-click channels lately and how they've changed because of iOS 14 coming out. How should marketers think about executing non-click channels?
Going back in history, a lot of the early kind of beginnings of performance marketing actually came out of the 70s and 80s, right? Way back in the day. And it's all those you remember growing up when you were a kid, there'd be the commercials on TV, there'd be call 1-800 blah 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 blah, and it'd be those infomercials and stuff like that, right? All they were tracking was with those different phone numbers and things like that to A/B test different ads. And so a lot of that methodology actually is really old. And then we kind of had the rise of Google and Facebook and this really click focused performance marketing model where you would use UTMs or different landing pages, things like that to track your performance and then narrow down to just the best performers so you could get the best ROI, right? Because really at the end of the day, I think that's what growth marketing is about, is generating the most amount of dollars while spending the least amount of dollars, right? And so it's a little bit different for brand marketing in that way, which is maybe more awareness or perception focused, or there's a lot of different goals. But kind of how I got into specific non-click channels is honestly, it was a pretty Machiavellian thing at the time. It wasn't a really a deep passion. It was 2018, 2019, I was like, Facebook is doing all this machine learning work, right? All of these social networks are doing kind of all this machine learning work. Google's switching to conversion campaigns. I'm getting automated out of a job, right? Like, it's like a lot of it is going to be focused on the creative. It's going to be doing all of that stuff. And that's not me. I've always been like kind of on the analytical side of things, the media buying side, all of that stuff. And so I was like, all right, I need to differentiate from like just like a career perspective. I need to be doing something different. And so what I did was I was like, all right, I'm going to get into kind of all the weird stuff, right? And for a while I was really pushing like Reddit ads and things like that. And then I was like, oh, there's this whole huge opportunity with stuff like billboards, right? And stuff like print and stuff like audio, radio, right? Stuff like TV. And I was like, this is like still actually really relevant. And because a lot of marketing millennial, right? Like a lot of millennials are like more focused on the digital channels, but like this stuff still reaches an incredible amount of people. And because there's like less attention placed on it, I was like, I think there might be like an opportunity to like go basically like take a contrarian take. Like everything's moving digital, everything's moving social, everything's moving click-based. Let's look at the view-based stuff. Let's look at all like kind of the stuff that, has been around forever and find like ways to innovate on it for these kind of like digitally native brands, right? And like see if they can expand their audience and like get more efficiency out of their marketing dollars by expanding into these new channels. And so around like 2018, 2019, I like started buying digital out of home and started buying connected TV for campaigns and things like that. Did some really cool stuff. Did a couple years back, got the #2 book on Black Friday on Amazon on like a big connected TV buy and audio buy, but a big integrated campaign with it. And I was like, yeah, there's something really here. And so that like has, kind of ignited my passion around the space, particularly with audio, but really just in general with kind of like the potential for these non-click channels to actually resonate for kind of like newer, more dynamic brands. And so, there's a lot of challenges around that, around buying it, around targeting it, around measuring it. But I think that where those challenges exist is like kind of where the opportunity is for like forward thinking marketers to get that alpha, right? To get the outsized results by paying attention to where maybe some other folks aren't.
I love the typical zig where everybody's zagging mentality, but I want to go into like that greatest challenge part of doing non-click. One thing is, how do you prove to people that they should be doing non-click? That's one. And then two, how are you thinking about what everybody thinks about is like measuring this, making sure there's an ROI of doing something like this?
Yeah, the challenges of getting into it, one, are substantive, right? It's a lot different than most, I would say, like, not to like overly generalize, right? But like most marketers probably under the age of like 40, right, are used to thinking about buying media specifically. And so, with like what's referred to as linear TV, which is your like classic television or like radio or whatever, a lot of this stuff is still done on the phone or email, negotiating with sales reps, right? And it could be a more manual process. And with that, there's of course challenges. It's starting to evolve where you're starting to see more like digital out of home, or what's referred to as like connected TV, where it's like Roku or Hulu, things like that, right? And that is still hard to get a hold of because you have to kind of have like, in most cases, you have to have on like a major omni-channel demand side platform like the Trade Desk or something like that, right? So there's challenges with buying it, first off. Second off, yeah, as you kind of hit on, attribution is the name of the game. I like to joke around that like marketers would be out on like the street corner spinning signs, if that's what got them the best ROI, because like, performance marketers, that's what it's all about at the end of the day is ROI, right? Like, how do I leverage that? How do I get the best ROI at scale? And so when it comes to attribution, there isn't a click, right? Like a lot of times cookies don't work for this stuff because you see something on television and then you pull out your phone and buy, right? Or you see a digital billboard and you pull out your phone and buy, or you go back home and you buy on your laptop. So it's not as clean. And so what you end up doing is like a lot of like match market or like holdout testing where you're just like, okay, I'm just going to target with television and audio and digital out of home, this one city. And I'm going to establish a baseline of where my sales were last month, or maybe historically last year. Say I got, 100 sales in Austin, right? Now I'm going to run all this stuff into Austin for a month. And I'm going to say, let's say I spend, $5,000 on that, right? And, I got 150 sales, right? The baseline I established, there's a 50% bump. Now, what's the value of those sales versus the amount that I spent? So it's like a little bit more holistic view of it, and a little bit more like modeled. But I actually really believe in that, because I think that it gives you a more holistic view of like what's actually happening, because we're selling to humans, we're marketing to humans, right? It's not so clean as somebody clicks an ad and then buys the product every time. Now that does happen, but for many, many people, it's not that clean. Maybe they'll see one ad, maybe they'll see 3 ads, then they're going to click, then they're going to think about it for a while, and then they'll come back later and Google it and like look up some reviews, and then a week later they actually can buy when their paycheck comes in. You know what I mean? And so I think when you actually take a step back, what looks like a challenge is actually an advantage to really smart marketers to be able to leverage not just new channels, but existing channels in a more holistic way. And you see a lot of like attribution tools popping up to try and like kind of bridge this gap, right? And so I'm certainly not like the only one talking about this, but the second order effect of those tools, like the MMM tools, like Northbeam or Outpoint or what have you, that are able to take that more holistic measurement. You're then going to be able to say, well, if I have a more holistic measurement, then I can start trying these non-click channels, because I have a way to confidently actually measure the outcomes of those and understand what my ROI is.
Would you hit home as just the specific tests that you need to do that, where geo or something like that, and see the up? Like, I think the problem with a lot of tests that marketers do is that they have this shiny object syndrome where they're doing too many at one time. So it's hard to see a lift anywhere. So then when there is actually a lift, the attribution software can tell, because you're just running a bunch of different experiences and campaigns at one time.
I'm not against shiny object, by the way. I'm not. I think that you should be testing new stuff all the time. But I think that you need to be intentional while you have your shiny object, right? Say, I'm going to run this test in Austin this month, and I'm also going to run this test in Denver, and this other test in Portland, and this other test in Chicago, right? And like with that sort of discipline, I think that you can like kind of find the middle ground between chasing new, which is a good thing. I think marketers should be chasing new. They should be trying new stuff, right? Like anything to get an edge and differentiate yourself over competitor brands or other brands and get people's attention is a good thing to be doing. But I think that it has to be met with that like kind of rigor, and it's like, and not to be overly simplistic about it, but go back to 3rd grade, right? Go back to 3rd grade and remember that scientific method, like have a hypothesis, set up a test, run the test, measure the outcomes, see how it matched your hypothesis or not. You could do that, and geo isn't the only way to do that, but it's a really useful way to do it cleanly. And there's a lot of cities in a lot of countries, and you can separate it out by that way and run a lot of tests in parallel if you have the budget and the bandwidth to do so.
My view on this shiny object is more that if you're going to test something and you're not intentional about it, and then you get pulled away from your focus, things that you're doing, then it's harder to do what you said, be intentional about these hypotheses. I'm all for testing as many channels. I think everybody should have a test budget and be testing all the time, because it's like investing. You need a portfolio. You need to test those channels. What is a marketing hill you would die on? Like if someone came up to you and said, hey, and you will stand strong on your opinion on this in marketing, what would that be?
A marketing hill I will die on is that you should never be over-indexed into one channel. I see a lot of people, because it sets you up, one, to only you're missing a lot of your potential market if you're over-indexed into just one channel, right? Like, and Facebook or Google is usually that channel, right? And that's great. By the way, you should spend tons of your money, maybe most of your money with Facebook and Google, right? If you're like a performance focused like e-commerce brand, right? But then, they kind of control your entire destiny, right? And if they decide one day that they don't like your business model or they don't like your ads or some false ban or something like that happens, then you're in trouble, right? Especially if you don't have like a good contact there or something like that. Like a lot of brands, it can be hard to get customer support with some of these like tech giant companies, as I think a lot of people have experienced. You should always have diversification for that reason. But the other thing too is that inherently multi-channel lift is a thing. If somebody sees you on Facebook and then hears about you on Spotify, or if somebody sees you on a billboard and then sees you on Hulu, those 1 + 1 = 3 most of the time, right? And that really works. And I've seen that bear out over and over again. And so channel diversification as a default, at least having 2 or 3 channels, I'll die on that hill. You should always have at least 2 or 3 channels going to diversify your risk and also to improve your performance overall.
Yeah, it's just funny because what you're saying which I like the analogy of, if you see a billboard and then you see a Facebook ad, vice versa, is you have to stay top of mind. And a lot of the people aren't ready to buy right now. And that's what a lot of people forget, is that a lot of performance marketing is capturing demand in the moment right now. But people forget that there's also a brand element to it, where when next time they are thinking about purchasing, let's say, a new watch, they saw your billboard, they saw your Facebook ad, and they saw it multiple times and heard it on a podcast, they heard it multiple times, and then be like, oh, I need a new watch. Let me go to that brand because that's first to mind now.
Exactly that. 1% of, and this is a non-scientific fact or non-scientific thing. This is a gut opinion. 1% of people are ready to buy right this second. Most people aren't. And so I think that by not staying top of mind, you're missing out on a lot, right? And you're actually spending marketing towards people that maybe would have bought if you kept top of mind with them. But now they've forgotten, because how many ads do you get a day? How much time are you spending on Instagram or whatever? How many other things you have just going on in your life, right? I give the example of, I bought not too long ago some Tecovas boots, right? Off of, a couple $100, pretty big purchase, like off of Instagram ad, right? But I got the ad on Instagram. I clicked through it. I checked out the boots a few times, whatever. And then I quit. And then I saw the ad probably like 50 more times. And sometimes I would click and it was in on my phone's browser for like a month, right? And then what finally ended up happening was I took the link, I sent it to my wife, and I said, hey, I'd really like these. And then she bought them for me for Christmas one year, right? There's no way to track that. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that having it across multiple channels, keeping it top of mind, understanding that the purchase doesn't always happen right away is really, really important for, any sort of dynamic forward thinking marketer, for sure.
I mean, even the old school marketers used to say 1 to 14, 14 times. Sometimes someone needs to see an ad to actually make and it could be in different, what the point you're making too, which I love, is I think every channel, someone's in a different state. For example, when you're in Facebook, you might be just bored, scrolling, looking for friends. If you're on the road, you might be on traffic. When you're on a podcast, you're in this intimate, where you trust is you listening to. There's different emotions at each channel that people have, and you can't just stick to one emotion that someone's having that could make them buy. You need to be in different states in different places that they could see you.
Oh yeah, and different people respond to different buying triggers, right? Whether it's a different kind of call to action or a different medium that they're hearing it on, the emotional state that they're in when they're listening to it, right? And so you're more likely to activate somebody if you're hitting them across different ones and, finding that one that resonates at the right time with them. And I think that that's really, really important.
I'm super impressed how Decibel is powering audio advertising. It's hard to create ads that get in the ears of your customers. But with Decibel's advanced targeting, marketers can reach the customers effectively and at scale across almost all digital streaming platforms. The icing on the cake, a powerful pixel for conversion attribution, and a choice between human and AI voices already baked into the platform. Visit decibelads.com and launch your campaign in less than 5 minutes. Using code millennials for $100 in credits. That's decibelads.com to get started now. What is one marketing trend you're seeing right now that marketers should jump on?
I do think that like the best, I'll toot my own horn a little bit here, but I think that non-click channels are the big ones. I see a lot of like savvy e-commerce companies that are starting to say, okay, we've got good traction with like Facebook and Google, and now we're going to start looking at something like connected TV, right? And we're going to take that geographic based approach to reach our customers inside of like a market that we already know is like pretty hot for us, right? And so like, let's say we over-index sales a lot into, relative to the population into like Miami or something like that, right? They're like, okay, now we're going to take and we're going to spend some time and we're going to do something that maybe doesn't have like an immediate ROI like that. And like, it takes like a little bit of time to actually see the lift bear out. I see that as a big trend. And then the other big trend that I see too is the like third-party analytics tools and not necessarily just trusting like platform level stats, right? Because platforms, Google and Facebook don't talk to each other, you know what I mean? And so like there's duplication in those sales process, like any sort of like sales journey is complex. And I think that it's really important so I guess I picked two, but it's really important to kind of like understand what that customer journey looks like in the aggregate and using that as like a point of basis to like, try diversifying into different channels and trying new things.
I think that's a great point. I think the closed wall, all these channels are closed wall channels, and they did it for a purpose. So you stick on their channel, but at the end of the day, understanding the buyer journey, also, I think I love marketing attribution and I'm a marketing ops person and I love marketing attribution, but I also know that even the best marketing attribution software can track everything. And it's
right,
like,
it
can. And it's more like a compass for you to make the right decisions than here, go invest all your money in this channel decision. It's more like let's just see how people are behaving and we can make smarter decisions. It's not, hey, let's not invest this because I can't see exactly what's happening with this channel.
I view attribution and I view all of this stuff kind of more as like sonar, like a submarine has, rather than like video. You know what I mean? It's not Google Maps. It's not like, oh, now you take a right turn and then you take a left turn and this street goes for a quarter of a mile or whatever, right? It's not that mapped out, and it never will be, because that's not how humans work when they buy stuff or sign up for a lead or whatever. It's a lot more like, oh, this direction is like generally the right way. This direction is generally not the right way. I think people need to get, the best marketers I see are people that are getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, are willing to make decisions in the face of like, partial information. And when they are able to ingest that data and analyze it and make smart guesses, I think is when they're really successful.
I love that sonar example. I never thought of it like that. I've always thought that.
Me either. I just came up with it.
Yeah, I love it. I think the same way about data, because, for example, data is everything in the past. It's nothing in the future. You can do predictions off of data, but everything is always in the past. But I always think about it like I saw that Free Climber movie, and they were the first person to like climb a wall, and there was no path to show them how to climb the wall. But generally, you can make decisions off of how things look by just looking at it, having gut feeling, but a lot of it is just climbing and feeling it out from experience and letting some things, like knowing that I need to bring a coat because the weather is going to be bad, but it's not. But so the people who've done something first don't have a complete map to show you how to do it. If you want to copy someone, they might have a map. And I'm not saying not copy someone. Sometimes that is the greatest way. But if you're trying to try a new thing, there isn't going to be a map. So you're going to have to create that map yourself. And it could be different every time because the weather could be different next time. The The conditions could be next time. The gear could be next time. Your physical strength could be different next time. I just think of it like that. Like data is just a way to inform decisions. It's not the map of the whole world.
I completely agree. And with all of these privacy updates, GDPR, CCPA, iOS 14.5, like privacy, the genie's out of the bottle. Like it's not going back in. People want reasonable privacy from, their technology. And like, I don't think that's a bad thing, at all. But I think that it's going to make marketers' jobs more based on kind of that, like the human element in a way when it comes to this like performance growth marketing is becoming more and more important again, where you're relying on, intuition, experience. You're thinking, okay, what could happen, and trying to prepare for different outcomes, different scenarios, different eventualities. I think that's cool. I think that it like kind of frees people in a way. I think for a while there, maybe like 2014 to like 2019, 2020, like we were almost like overly reliant on data. Everybody assumed that it was like 1-to-1, and it's never actually been 1-to-1, and it's going to be even less so moving forward. Not that it's not important. Data is incredibly important, and it's going to get more important, but it's going to get more important in kind of like a sign pointing you in a direction rather than like, specific like A, then B, then C sort of steps.
Yeah, it just helps you make smarter decisions. That's all I think about it. And I think knowing how to read it, but I also know there's a lot of people, and I've seen this for years, that collect data and don't know how to interpret it and make decisions off of what they think they're interpreting, which is interesting as well.
Yeah, that is also why you need perspectives from different people, different kinds of people, different people in, the brands that you're working on, right? To kind of like, I'm not advocating consensus decision making. I'm advocating, kind of collecting multiple voices so that you can make a decisive decision based on fuller information. I think it's really important for sure.
What is one thing someone starting out right now should do that they'll think themselves 5 years from now?
I'm a big believer in like thinking of like, if I'm just starting in my career, I'm definitely a big believer in being a specialist, right? Having like something that you go deep on. But, I think I've heard it referred to as like a T, right? Where you have like a broad base and then you like go deep in like one specific area. I do think that as you have to make more of these kind of intuitive decisions moving forward, like understanding the context of how different parts of marketing work, right? Whether if you're a creative and you can understand how these data decisions are made, like you're going to be a better creative, and vice versa. If you're, a data focused media buyer ops person, right? And you understand the different smart ways of like testing different creative and doing like meaningful A/B tests with creative, you're going to be able to work better kind of like cross-functionally with your teams. And so I think that that's like a big thing. I'll say like specifically, if you're like in a brand right now and you're working on something, the biggest thing that I think people would wish that they would do right now is try and find a way to like liberate your data and have like your own data silo. You know what I mean? Don't just rely on like the platform level metrics, and whether that's using a third-party tool or like collecting your own data via like post-purchase, post-lead surveys, things like that, and kind of like looking holistically at all of that and having kind of your own data moat, as it were. I think that that's going to really prepare you to be more successful in the future. Like doing one-off tactics that work are great, but understanding like why, because you actually are collecting that data, whether it's, customer information or, like, of course, with consent, or understanding kind of like the macro trends of why your customers are buying and like the different archetypes of customers that are buying through these different, both quantitative, like from like a pure number standpoint, and qualitative data, collecting that and owning it yourself away from like the platforms, I think is going to just give you so much context to better iterate and evolve your marketing over time, for sure.
I love the data mode type thing. And I think the one thing that you said that was really good is like the qualitative and the quantitative. I think you definitely, like, a lot of people think of quantitative and they leave out how much collecting data, like first party data, zero party data, data of like conversations you've had with people, comments on social media, all these like little things that are giving you insights into your customer that you wouldn't have, and putting that in one place is so special to like make good decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that like all of those types of data are valuable in their own way. And like when you get the best decisions, especially when you're making decisions based on kind of like general direction, not a full picture, having those different sort of like guideposts, right? Like you don't want just a map, you want a map and a compass, right? And you want to know what the weather conditions are going to be. And you want to get like maybe like have an interview with somebody that went down that road before, right? And like, you know, kind of understanding all of those different contexts, I think you're going to be better equipped to succeed moving forward. So I would encourage people to think of like how, and it's going to look different for every brand, but how would you build your data moat, and what data should you be collecting today in order to kind of evolve your marketing and make it more efficient over time and have that edge over your competition.
Who's inspiring you in the marketing space right now? It could be a growth marketer, it could be any marketer, or who's like doing things that you're looking at and be like, wow, that's super cool.
So, I mean, I think that there's like a lot of other like MarTech companies that I really look to a lot for inspiration, that I think are thinking about things in the right way. And then there's some like individuals, you know, most of my experience is going to be, I spend most of my time on like Twitter, following different folks. And so I really like the approach that like Marpipe is taking towards like creative A/B testing. I really also like the work that Northbeam and Outpoint are doing from like an MMM or media mix modeling perspective, to have kind of like that broader view of your data. And then, you know, I really, from like an individual perspective, I really like this person on Twitter, Miles Younger, who's works in data at Monks, which is a pretty big ad agency group. And I think that he has a lot of smart things to say about it. You know, looking at it from the perspective of like, you know, I like to look at what big brands are doing, right? And figure out how to like translate that into a lightweight way for like mid-market and smaller brands, and say, you know, if this is the way that the big players are thinking about it, how do I translate that for me now in order to kind of get an edge up over kind of other people that are like a similar size in my market, for sure.
I love that approach. I think a lot of people, I think there's so many different places that you can get inspiration for, but also like, how could you compete in the market when that person's way bigger than you and you're trying to be a challenger brand against them?
And understanding those tactics that they're taking and saying, what can I apply to me and how can I do it better, leaner, faster, is always a good thing to be thinking about. So
awesome. The last thing I want to ask is, how can people find you? You're doing something cool right now, so I want people to know about this, because I think this is one of the ways to do something different in marketing and try something different, and also be a contrarian marketer.
If you want to find me personally, twitter.com/JEROMYSONNE is where I spend most of my time. A lot of it's joke posts that I do, but I do try and like do have some useful kind of like marketing content as well there. You know, for my company, we're decibelads.com. Decibel is the name of the company, and we are a performance audio advertising company. And so we help folks sign up and get across basically all of the streaming audio, podcasts, digital radio, all of those stuff, and actually have recently expanded into doing AM/FM ads as well, right? And so figuring out how to deploy across all of those at the same time, as well as optimize and grow with audio, which audio is an exploding channel. You know, it's going to become an even bigger part of the conversation. And we focus specifically on programmatic audio ads too. So host read ads are great. I love host read ads. I think that they're super useful, but I think a growing part of that market will be those traditional ad spots, right? And targeting based on, you know, the way that you would target with like Facebook ads, like behavioral audiences and demographics and like, you know, specific geographic areas and stuff in order to kind of reach those customers. Audio's a really great channel that can support like an existing program, reach net new customers and, help improve the efficiency of existing channels as well. So that's what we do. And you can sign up and get started with an audio ad across basically, again, all of these channels in less than 5 minutes with what we've got. So
I know attribution's hard. So if you did hear about Decibel and you do try it out, tell them about the Marketing Millennials so they actually can do attribution. I guess.
Very important. Post-purchase, post-sign-up survey.
Well, thank you so much for joining. And this was awesome. I think super good insights, and I appreciate you.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for listening. Tune in next week to hear more great insights from marketing's coolest operators. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the Marketing Millennials podcast and giving it a 5-star rating. It helps bring more marketers into our community.